The Space tool in Vectorworks is a very powerful tool with a ton of different settings. So I'm going to show you the simple method to generate spaces, to create room labels, and area calculations. Let's go. All right, let's jump right in here. I want to make this as quick as possible for you. So I go into my first floor plan. Let's talk about where to put these spaces. Now, typically, for most projects, especially residential, the easiest place to put your spaces is either on the design layer. So if we go over to our space tool, here we are, space planning, spaces. We can pick the walls to create a space. And that's one approach. We can also fill those spaces, draw them. What I like to do is just draw simple rectangles. For more complicated projects, I might put spaces on their own layer. So I'd come over here and say new, O1 spaces for the first floor, and draw them all there. That gives me control of all my spaces at once, but that's more complex, I'd say, commercial projects. I'll use rectangles. Now, the thing about rectangles is they stay square, and if this had, came out this direction, I could select both of them, add surface, and then get a polygon out of that. But rectangles are simple, they're fast, they're easy. Drawing a rectangle, this is for the building footprint. Now I can either put this on the floor layout or the slab. This is a label that I typically would like to see on my site plan. So I can either right click here and create objects from shapes. You can see my rectangle, or I can come up here to the AEC drop down menu, create objects from shapes. Then I just need to come down, select the type of object. In this case, it's a space. We're gonna delete that source shape, click OK. Now we have our space over here. The first thing to do is create a new class. Now, if you're not familiar with the import classes, we have all kinds of libraries available, from the AIA classes, which is what you'd see in AutoCAD, UK unit class structure. I like using these Vectorworks Imperial architecture classes. Now, if you've noticed, as you're working, classes start appearing in your drawings. You don't know where they came from. They're coming from this template right here. And a lot of the plugin tools, the library tools that you use from Vectorworks are set up to use these classes. So it's really important to get familiar with these things and stay organized. Knowing this structure, we have 3 space classes here that would come in it if I used one of the library spaces. I recommend following that structure. So I'm going to create a new class for this, and it's going to be my space building. And I want to edit the properties after creation. Click OK. That's going to bring up my edit classes dialog box. I can change the name if I messed it up, but these are the 2D attributes that I want my space to use. So I'll use at creation. I'm going to make this a gray. I'm going to uncheck link pin opacity. I like to have a little bit of transparency to that, so I'm going to turn that down. Under my pin, I'm going to use a line style. I'm going to use a dashed line, so I'll click on that and type in dash. And let's just scroll up here. I'm going to use that Vectorworks medium dash if I can find it. Here we go, Vectorworks medium dash. Now I want it to be a red dashed line, and I'd like it to stand out on my site plan, so I'm going to make it a 0.5, a rather thick line. Now, for visualization, we use textures, and I'll go in that another video, but you'll want to use maybe some glass textures there. We'll say, do you want selected objects? Use those graphic attributes. Yes. Notice there isn't an opacity there. For some reason, that doesn't always link over, so we want to come down with that selected to our attributes palette and use that fill opacity. That's going to give it that 50% transparency. Now we have our space. It's in a class, and I want to give it a name. I'm going to use custom space names down here. I'm going to call this one in all caps my building footprint. Now notice nothing really appears to change in the space, and that's because spaces use data tags for the room labels. So I'll come over here to my dims and notes, and I'm going to find my data tag tool up here in the style drop down of the settings. I'm going to drop that down, and you can see there are a number of tags available in architecture space folder of the Vectorworks libraries. I'll use this residential tag for now, and I'm going to change it. I'll show you how to change that. So we'll select on that, and now we can tag the center of that. It says building footprint width or dimensions. Now you might want dimensions, depends on your municipality, how you'd like that to show on your site plan. But here we have our building footprint. If I come over here to our data tag, notice that's controlled by this custom space name right here. So going back to this tag, what I want to do is convert this to an unstyled tag. Now I can go into the settings and I can adjust the display and the leader for this. I don't want a leader, just make sure it looks like this. Now over here in the display, I want to edit that tag layout. If you've done the graphic library or the graphic legend tool video, you know how this works. This is a piece of link text. We can put link text, we can put graphics in here, we can put static text, but this space name is defined by dynamic text linking back, and we can adjust all of the text attributes here. So let's say I wanted a custom font, or if I wanted this to be a little bit larger, I can make that larger. I'm okay with the way this is reporting. I do want the name, but instead of room dimension, I want to use an area. And let's just make this a little bit larger. There we go. We'll scroll on down, and then dynamic text, we're going to define that data tag field. Up at the top, the label, let's make this area. That's going to change what this says right here. And then you can see in the current tag field definitions, it is pulling the object parameters of the space for room dimensions. All we have to do is click on this. I'll search for area, and I want to scroll up. In this case, we're using the energy area is the hashtag there. That's the equation or the name of that field. And we want to change the units from a precision of 001 to a whole number. Now this is really important. We want to replace the current definition. So we want to make sure that this is reading out according to what we want to show from the data source. That gets missed a lot. With that done, I'll click OK. And we can see that changes to area. When I exit out of this tag layout, you'll see it's reporting a whole number of square foot, and I can click OK on this. With that set up, we can pull it over here so it's really easy to see. I come over here and I'm going to say new plugin style from unstyled plugin. I'll keep it in the data tag styles folder that gets created when I brought this in. The space is going to look to this folder, and if you put it somewhere else, you're going to end up with duplicates. So just make sure it goes in this folder. Click OK. That'll bring the data tag style dialog box up. Let's give this a name. I'm going to say building footprint maybe. Just kind of reaching around my mic here. Auto placement is fine. Display is fine. Leader, we just want to make sure we're not using the leader. The only thing that to point out here is if maybe you've got some rotated buildings and you want that tag to remain horizontal, you can use the page access here. Let's go ahead and click OK on this. Now, one other thing you want to do is bring up your resource manager and keep it clean. There's the medium dash line we just brought in. I'm going to go ahead and put that in my line types folder. Really important. Stay organized with your classes, with your resources. Here we have the space tag that we just brought in for residential. Here we have our building footprint. Right click on that, go down to plugin object style options, and we want to control this by class. So I'm going to say new class, and this is going to be my space, and this will be the building label. So building label. I don't need to edit the properties after creation. I'm fine. This is just a class to control visibilities. Unless you want it to be some special color, we don't need to worry about that. Just click OK. Now, going back to our drawing, you can see that this building footprint is going into the space building label class. And that gives me the ability to control how these things are viewed. If I scroll out, you can see there's my building label. If I turn off the walls, you can see that space a little bit better. But I can turn off the space. I can turn off the building label. And you'll want to control that for your drawing. So typically you just want to see that building label, that building footprint tag. All right, so that's the basics of how to set up a space with a tag. I'll show you how to create a style for that space here. And let's turn these off. Let's draw rectangles, and we're going to do this for our rooms now. Now my rooms, I want to appear from the inside edge of that wall. And up here, looks like I've got some cabinets that got slid out. Got my Murphy's bed there. Let's go ahead and draw another rectangle for this office / kitchen. I can hold the B key to see behind things to get that where I want it. And I'm going to right click either one of these rectangles. Same process, create objects from shapes. Should already be loaded up with space since that's the last thing we did. And you can see here we have our space in our none class. Again, create a new class. I'm going to say space dash rooms. Okay. We'll edit properties after creation. Click OK. And use it creation. In this case, I'm just going to make this a blue. Unlink that opacity. Bring it back to 50%. For the pin, I'm not too worried about seeing that pin outline. You could make this a thickness or a color if you'd like. And I'm just going to go ahead and click OK on this. Yes, we do want that to use those class attributes. And again, over here, let's make sure we link that class fill opacity there. So now we have our spaces. It's in the correct class. And our space name, I'm going to call this just room. Hit tab, lock that in there. And then we want to create a style out of this, and you'll see why here in just a second. Go ahead and say new plugin style from unstyled plugin. And I want to create a folder to stay organized. I'm going to put that at the top level. We don't want it going into another folder. And I'm going to say new folder, spaces. So we're going to put this in our spaces folder. Click OK. That will bring up the style dialog box, and I'm just going to call this my rooms. So we'll go through a couple of these. Numbering. Incremental value, just call this 1, but I want to unlink this from the style. So this means that the style is dictating the that parameter, or I can have instance control. In this case, I want to be able to number these however I do individually, so I will change that to instance control. Occupancy. So room names, these are going to have different room names, so I'm going to unlink that, and it's pulling up room from the list of different space names that we have here. I want to make sure that's set to custom, and just because this is going to be my generic, call it the room, unlink that. One other you might uncheck from the style, make that instance control is proposed area. That way you can put in your proposed area here based on your programming. 2D boundaries and area, we really don't need to worry about this, especially if we're just doing rectangles. If you picked boundaries, you might change this, from wall center lines to wall outer core, center wall. So you do have some control over where that gross and that net boundary is displayed. But with rectangles, you don't need to worry about it. The thing about rectangles, if we move walls around, we do need to adjust our spaces. Takes a little bit more work, but I just find that for me, Most of the time that's easier. 3D boundaries. I'll show this in another video, how to create 3D visualizations from your spaces so you can really look at that program space and create diagrams. Space label. I've already brought in that residential space label, so I'm going to make this by style, and I'm going to add in this space name over the room dimension. Click OK, and I'm going to dictate that by style. So here we have our space tag, residential. Graphic attributes. This one's kind of important. What I like to do here is make all attributes by class, and I like to uncheck this by style or change it to by instance. That way I can control the instance colors down here in my attributes palette. Another way to do this, we might do it for larger projects where you're really working out the programming, is just create a space for each different room type. So you might have office or kitchen or hallway or bathroom, men's bathroom, women's, and then control the colors by the class. For residential projects, this is how I like to do it. It just goes a little faster and easier. Not a lot of classes to manage. And that's all I do. So we'll go ahead and click OK. It'll bring in that tag. Let's go ahead and not back this one up. Let's look at that tag. It's in the space rooms class. So the issue with that is if I come down here and to my spaces and I turn off rooms, all of it's going to turn off. We want more control over, we want to separate the control out. So let's go to our resource manager, right click on our data tag that we're using and go back into the plugin object options and change this to a new class that we can control the label separately. And I'm going to call this one my space rooms label. Okay, we don't need to edit the properties after creation. We're fine with the way that's set up, and we'll click OK. Next thing we need to do is just check on that to make sure. Still in the space rooms, make sure that goes to the space room label. Now when we turn that space off, we still have the room. Let's turn that on, select on it, and I'm going to call this my shop. But now that we have it set up, it's really easy to go to this rectangle, right click on it, create objects from shapes, make a space out of it, and because we have a style set up, we can just come up to our style drop down and say replace and use our room style there. It's going to bring in that tag. That tag should be in the correct class. The room, because it's instance control, is not, it's just using whatever class that was in. So that's that none class, at least the graphic attributes. It is pulling in the opacity, so we're not really seeing a fill there. And let's change this. Let's just say we want this to be a red. And we also want to change the name of that. Now, just be aware, we're changing the space, not the tag. And I'm going to call this my kitchen / office. All right, now let's do this on our second floor. Go up to our second floor layout. I could turn on that flooring, that floor framing so that we can see it. And then same process, I'm just gonna draw some rectangles. Actually, this one's gonna go all the way over here. And let's do our bathroom. See if we can pick that up. Hold that B key, make sure we get it at the right spot, somewhere around there. And then let's do our bedroom as well. Okay, so we have these three rectangles. Go ahead and create objects from shapes. Make that a space. Let's go ahead and replace the style using that room space that we just set up. And then again, I can change the color of that on the fly just because the way I have it set up. We'll make this, let's say, a kind of a purple. That's a sleepy color there. Next, again, create objects from shapes, create that space. And I could rename it now, but let's call this our bath. We'll need to go back and hit that bedroom as well. Notice it's not changing anything because it's not using our style. Let's go ahead and replace that. And we can take this and move it around. Let's take this bedroom. And again, we have instance control. Notice all of the other fields are grayed out because they're controlled by the style. I can hit hide style parameters and just see the things that I have controlled per instance. And so that makes it really easy to come in here and put in our proposed area. Finally, we have our loft here. A little loft for an office. Create object from shapes. Make that a space. And replace that for rooms. And let's call this our loft. Now let's say we want to pull this landing out of that loft. We can still do that with a rectangle. We can come over here and just draw right on top of it and pull out that area right there. So I'm selecting both the space and the rectangle. You can see I have two objects selected. Right click, clip surface, delete that out, and now you can see my space has been adjusted. Let's give this a different color. Let's say we want yellow for that. And our bathroom, let's make this one green. So now they're really easy to see. Might move that around. Take our loft, pull it up so we can see it a little easier. And so that's how we control our rooms, at least the spaces, separate from our room labels. And if we need to adjust those rooms, that becomes easy just to use that reshape tool, or however those walls move around, that I can adjust those as I need. So we have our rooms and our building footprint. The next thing we need to do is have this show on our cover sheet. Now, one thing you might end up doing is set up your worksheets ahead of time so that they're formatted the way that you like and they can be in your template, and then we can just add into them. So I can either right or double click on that, and then I can add that into one of those database rows. I want to show you one other way of doing this, and we can go reports, create report. That's in our tool drop down menu. And this is just going to be, say, our building footprint. Really, it's going to bring in all of our spaces, but it's pulling from our 2D locus. So let's come down here, have it pull from our spaces. So that's our basic criteria. Then our columns, we have records from those spaces. I'll just click in here and type in custom or name, and I want to find that custom space name, push it over there. So that's column 1, and then area. There's our area. I want to push it over here. That's column 2. Let's say we wanted our proposed area. We could pull that in as well. I'm not going to do that now, but just with these two down here at the bottom, we can place this on drawing if we wanted to create a whole new report, or we can append this to an existing report. Again, this is what I like about setting up my graphics and my template first with some worksheets, so I can just add that into my area calculation worksheet. Click OK, and it's going to add that into those area calculations. You can see I get rid of some rows if I need to. And it's reporting all of the spaces. Now to fix that, we just want to come up to our row number 3, which is our database header. You can see all of the report out for that database header, and edit the criteria. And what we'll do is, because we've set this up in separate classes, we can add in some criteria. So I just hit add, and I'm going to say class. And instead of appliance, I'm going to come down and find that building class, and it's reporting one object that meets that criteria. And now I can just click OK on it. It's going to give me my building footprint. One other thing I like to do is format that cell. It's set up to report a dimension. I'm going to change that to decimal. I'm gonna say 0 decimal places, and I'm gonna add a trailer of space SF for square foot, and then click OK. Now you can see it's just 975 square foot. These came in from that report I generated, and I could change that to name. It's just a label, and then area. I can format this however I'd like. Hit tab. Now let's say we wanted a room report as well. We can come down here to a new row, change this to a database header. That'll bring up the criteria box, and we want to go for the type is a space. Let's find our space types. That's going to give us all 6 of those, so we need to put in some more criteria. Again, we'll say class, and rather than appliance, we want that to be our rooms. That brings it down to 5. Now, if you wanted to report this first floor, second floor, you could even add in another layer, or add in the layer and say, well, I only want to see my first floor spaces. So now it's down to 2, or I only want to see my second floor spaces. Now those are those 3 that we did. Go ahead and remove that, click OK. Notice nothing appears. That's because we don't have these columns filtering. I can select on this box and say records, space, and then come find that, name. Say it was custom space name. There we go. I can have it sort ascending. If I want them alphabetical order, I could do that. And there's my shop, kitchen, bedroom. Another easy way to do it is just select on the one that we already have here, copy this value, and then come down here and paste this value. And again, I would want to come in here and format that cell so that it has a decimal at 0 and a trailer as SF with a space in front of it, just to make it look nice. Now I can close that down, and you can see there's our area calculations. One final thing, let's come over here to our sheets. Make sure you see this. Let's go to our first floor here, and notice we don't have our spaces or our labels showing, so I can just go into the viewport. So I've got my viewport selected, come over to my classes, scroll down, let's find that space. Let's see, I'm a little too far. I just want to turn on the label. Hit OK, and now I'm going to see those room labels appear. Same for a site plan. If I just wanted that building label to appear, the building outline to appear, I could do it on that viewport. I could also create diagrams and show the spaces themselves to see the colors. So that's it. I hope this helps you get into using spaces, understanding data tag labels, and area calculations. It's a great step. There's a lot of features in there to take advantage of. If you have questions, or if you'd like me to cover specific topics, just put your comments down below. You can join me over on my forum at buildinginformationmodeling.locals.com, or you can find me over at my website at sem.studio. Keep up the good work, and I wish you well.